All right, can everybody hear me okay though? It's pretty good. Talking
Yeah.
and everything's good. What about the piano's good? Okay, well, today we're going to work on two things for the next 30 minutes. And so what we're going to practice is we're going to practice just a little variation I came up with of a famous finger exercise. We don't do very many finger exercises. And so I kind of morphed it around a little bit and put it into our 2-5-1 progression. And then we're just going to work on a really easy 2-5-1 lick that is, we're just going to learn it. It's a couple of beats long, and it's designed to help you hear and start to feel the 6th degree of a scale as a resolution. So sometimes this note, when we play a C chord, sometimes this note, until we learn to use it, it feels a little bit like a strange note. Right, but it actually sounds good. So one of the things we have to do when we play jazz is sometimes there's weird sounds that we're not used to, and we have to open our ears up to those sounds. And so we just play, and so you have to kind of do a little practice. I think some of you, maybe we've practiced this before, where we've had rules where we say, okay, you have to play the 9 and the 6. You have to end your improv on the 9 and the 6. And if you do that for for a few days of practice, then all of a sudden you get used to that sound and it starts to sound good. It's kind of a mini version of the hit machine. So if everybody is at their piano, if you have the sheet, you can look at the first line. This is the outline of the chords that we're going to play. So it's just a 2-5-1 in C major, but we have a little bit of a different, we have added a C6 chord at the end. Okay. So the left hand voicing is in root position. And then when it becomes a G7, oh, got another burst coming in. Then when it becomes a G7, the top note comes down, the 7 comes down a half step to become the 3rd. And then we have a root position C major 7. And then we turn this into a C major 6 by dropping the thumb down to the A. So let's play that a couple of repeats here. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. These are the chords that we're going to outline when we do this drill. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. C major. C major 6. 2, 3, 4. Okay. The right hand is going to play a rootless version of D minor. So it's almost the same. We're going to raise our thumb up to an E. So our first chord voicing is like, it looks like this D minor 9. And it even kind of looks like it has like a little F triad on top of that. Okay. Now these notes move together. And we move to this G7. So here, our hands are actually playing the same thing. So the first one, the right hand is playing a rootless D minor, has an E, and the left hand is rooted. And then for the 5 chord, we're playing the same thing, a rootless G9. And then for the C chord, we do the same as the first chord. So the left hand plays it in root position, C major, and the right hand plays 9, 3, 5, 7. So when we start working on this exercise here, we'll just do a couple of repeats of that. When we start working on this exercise though, you can make it more complicated or less complicated as needed for right now. So if all you did was practice on that first chord, that's perfectly fine. So this is the last chord, a C6, and it's also the same in both hands. So our first chords, we're playing rooted in the left hand and rootless in the right hand. And then we play the same thing in each hand. Then we play rooted in the left hand and rootless in the right hand again. and then we play the same thing again. Okay. So if that chord progression, if tackling all four at once, because we have lots of different levels of players in here, if tackling all four is too much at once, break it down maybe and just try to practice the idea of what we're going to do just on the first two chords. Okay? And then you can go after and you can kind of learn the rest of the exercise. Let's see. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start to break these notes apart. So here's my first position of D minor. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play pinkies and number fours. Okay. Then I'm going to play, in keeping my hand position, then I'm going to play number fours and number twos. This is why it's a finger exercise. Okay. And then keeping my hand position, I'm going to play thumbs and number twos. And then I'm going to play number fours and number twos. Okay. So once again, this is like the first chord, and this is kind of what we're doing basically on all four of these hand shapes, is we're keeping our fingers the same, but we're trying to play in mirror image, and then the chord is designed so that it sounds harmonized, right? Whereas if I did it like this, and I started with D minor both, well, it still would work okay actually. But then when we get here, we have this major second, right? So the voicings are designed so that everything kind of sounds nice. So here it is again. So we're going to start. You can also read along on the sheet, but we're in measure 3, and we're going to go 5. Find your hand position. 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4. And let's just put that on repeat. And so you can practice this at any tempo right now. That is okay. We're going to spend a couple minutes practicing I'm just going to practice this in this key. I'm going to go even slower. And so you can practice this very slow. Feel your fingers drop into the key bed of the piano. There's a lot of weight in your arm and in your hand. So it's much less a finger exercise than you might think. I'm not going. Right? That will be inefficient playing of the piano. I'm in my hand position. I hardly have to move my fingers at all. I can kind of make it a hand thing. Go again. Yeah, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. So now before moving on, if you want to try to speed it up, you might speed it up a little bit. you can try to focus on things like, when you're going slow, you focus on different things than when you're going fast. When we're going fast, it might become more of a finger drill because of the speed, right? But if I'm going slow, I might try to focus on trying to play those notes as even as I can. Try to make them like the exact same loudness. Okay. At first, when you're practicing this, it's no pedal, right? So that it's all very clean. Okay. Now we're going to move on. We're going to look at the second chord here. So if we go back to what our chords are, now we have two of these rootless G7s, and they're the same in each hand. So we were here, where the only difference was our right hand thumb was up a note. And now we're moving here, so that we're playing the same thing in each hand. D, F, A, B, D, F, A, B. And we're going to do pretty similar, the same thing. I mean, the pattern is kind of the same, but the fingers are going to change a little bit. So what we're talking about here now is we're going to do 5, 4. We're in this position now. We're going to do the same thing. 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4. And then 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2. Okay? So same kind of thing. And notice we're not going like this, right? We're doing the same fingers so that we get some nice kind of harmony happening. Notice we're kind of neglecting the third finger in this exercise. And that's because this finger is normally pretty strong, and it's also like the center point of our hand. Normally doesn't need as much work as like these two. So here we are on the G7. 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4. Okay. Now, if you're reading this, you may be able to read through the whole thing right away and play the exercise no problem. You can just start doing laps of that in a nice, slow, easy tempo. And the goal would be we can take this drill and then we can move it through some different keys. And that's, of course, how we make everything way more tricky. But for now, we're going to go from the beginning now. Oops. Here's my D minor position. And now I'm going to add in G7 right there. So we're going to start in this position, do the drill. And then we're going to move it down to this position. We're going to go nice and slow. 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, now I'm going to switch to G7. then the last two sections here, we go to our C major chord is our next shape. And so we're root position in the left hand. And then we have a rootless position in the right hand. We've taken the low C up to the D. Right? Okay, and so that gives us this harmony here, so we're not playing that when we play them together. So now we're going to do the same thing here. It should feel pretty much the same as what we did on the D chord. We're just shifted down a note. Right? Because we're in the key of C, we can just literally slide. You can feel that it feels the same. Right? 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4. I'm going to repeat that. I'm not moving on yet. I'm going to do this 3 more times. Take it slower. Keep in this position. I'm going to slowly speed it up a little bit each time I go through. So now I'm going to go a little bit faster. 5, 4, 5, 4. Go a little bit faster. Maybe pedal a little bit. Okay, so when you're pedaling, you can practice your pedaling here by pumping the pedal when you make the adjustment. So it's down, and then I pump and pedal, pump and pedal. You can keep it down the whole time. It just gets a little bit less clean and gets kind of smeared across. Okay, so then the last measure here is that we're going to go and we're going to do hands again together on the C6. So same finger, so it's going to go 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. But the position is here. C, E, G, A, C, E, G, A in each hand. Now, especially if you haven't been playing a lot of classical music, this drill is pretty left-hand intensive. And so you're going to have to go really slow at first to start to kind of like get this used to playing a lot of single notes. We've probably been practicing a lot of chords in the left hand. So you're just going to have to take it nice and easy, but you can go as slow as you want on this drill. And then it becomes C6. Sorry. That transition is a little tricky. So I would sit and I would keep this, I would try to keep this going for a couple minutes, right? If I was going to practice this, this would probably be, I would try to focus on doing a lapse of this for a little while, especially if I'm going to work on some hand exercise, and that's the point here. Yeah, so you're right, Kristen. It's pretty natural to want to play threes there. And you can do that too, but like for me, threes actually makes it a little harder because it makes my arms feel like they're really close together. And you can totally do that. Right? But sometimes,
can I ask you, it seems like it's about strengthening the fourth finger.
That's kind of what we're trying to do, get that 5 and 4 working. Yeah, exactly. Right. And so for learning the exercise, I say, yeah, of course you can learn it and use number threes, but then you want to try to transition to number fours as you keep going with this riff. Cool? So if I'm getting to a point though where I'm going, and I'm able to play through the drill, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. Next, I'm going to do C minor. I'm going to start on C minor. So I have C minor in the left hand, and I have C minor 9 in the right hand. The fingers are the same, but now the shape has changed. And so that playing it like this, you can kind of cascade down through the different keys of the piano. Oops. Hey, it's hard. I have to work it out too. But anyways, we can start going really slow on this, and this is going to be a great little finger drill, and it's actually easy. It looks hard when you read it. There's a lot of notes, but almost all the technical exercises on the piano, when you read them in the sheet music, they look really, really hard, and it scares a lot of people away. But what you have to do is you have to break it down to what's happening, and then just like figure out the code. And then once you figure out the code, then normally it's the same thing on repeat they always write it in 16 notes, right? Because it's supposed to be a technical exercise. So, okay, so then the other thing we want to learn is we want to learn this, hear the sixth lick, which is what I named it. So what we're going to do in the left hand is we're going to play another 2-5-1 in the key of C. It's a root and a third. And then we're going to play pincher in the left hand, but we're going to start with this D minor in a root and third. Go to the G7 here, and then play C major as a root and third here. Okay. Now the lick starts by outlining a D minor 7 chord. Here's the pattern. So some of you may be able to pick this up by ear just by listening to it a couple times. If you need to do one hand at a time, drop the left hand out for this. Okay. This is the significant part here is the ending. 7, 6. That sounds like a resolution, right? It kind of sounds, I mean, we're playing the A minor chord at the time when we're playing that, but in the context of a C, that's like it's kind of a happy sounding note actually, right? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I will spend a few minutes playing this. This is an easy lick, right? I mean, it's easy for me, right? And so if I'm still going to play this for the next 3 minutes. I'm going to play it slow and I'm going to start making it faster because I'm going to do some reps of this lick so that it starts to get into my hands. Oops. Okay, so I'm starting to notice now what's happening in this lick. At the top, I'm outlining an F chord, right? But that's because I'm on a D minor chord, and the F triad is the top of D minor. Then I'm going to G7, where I have a 13 here. But in my mind, I'm not really going to analyze this E, because at this point, I know the line is just kind of moving through it. And then here's a lower neighbor. So a note that's not in the key. And then up to the 5, 7, 6. You could change your left hand if you want. Okay, so I'm starting to feel like I'm getting the hang of this lick. I'll speed it up a little bit. If you want to speed it up, do that. But if you need to keep it slow, just keep it where you can play it. Okay. Now my next move, I've kind of looked at the chord. I kind of know that it outlines this D minor. Then it does a lower neighbor, even though the chord changes underneath. And then it goes 5, 7, 6. I've kind of starting to internalize it, starting to get into my hand, and I might already start making a couple little adjustments. So I start out with using some chromatic neighbors, right? I can take the important notes of this lick and just play maybe a half step down and back. And I keep the essence of that little piece of vocabulary, but I've kind of changed it a little bit, right? It pushes me a little bit away from playing a lick and a little bit more into improvising my own little riff. That was a stretch. Lots of scales, weird scales in there. Remember, you can take notes out too. And that changes the piece of vocabulary also. If you're Bud Powell, you go. And you put trails on and turns on everything. Right? Okay. Now, before I make a move to start transposing this lick, I will put another 2-5-1 in front of it and just improvise in the key of C, trying then on the following repeat to land in this lick. because when we learn a piece of vocabulary, the main thing we need to make sure we do is be able to use it as a link in a chain, so that if we're playing, whoops, that wasn't very good, but I need to be able to land in that as I improvise, right? And not that I just have to always start an idea or start a phrase with that lick. Okay, so here it is again. Maybe I'll play a scale down. Right? And I'll do something like that. So a couple things are happening when I do that. First of all, I am improvising for a little 2-bar section, but then I'm trying to have to plan what I play so that I'm going to be around F, so that I can start my lick when I get there. So if I'm playing up here and I'm going to have to jump down, that's not going to make very much sense. So having to have this plan is kind of similar to the concept of having to have target tones and target notes when I'm improvising. I have to think ahead just enough to make sure I'm around here, and I might have to alter my improv so that this all flows together nicely. Or and so I would spend, if I had a 30-minute practice session, it's gonna be, you have to always think in your practice, right? So let's say I'm trying to practice 30 minutes a day. I have these 2 things that I want to practice. I have to recognize and know and schedule my work so that, like, I would have to learn this echoes drill. And that actually might take me 1 or 2 whole 30-minute practice sessions. And then I might have to learn this lick, and that might take me a whole practice session also. So that might be 3 days of practicing just to get the prerequisite work done. But then I can play these and I can make them a smaller portion of each day's practice, right? So now all of a sudden, okay, it's like, I think I know that lick, but what we know about learning is that I have to go way farther. I have to play that many more times before it goes into my long-term memory. And for people who are good at, and who are at a level where you're transposing already, transposing this lick is gonna make you think about it in a deeper way, and it's gonna make it become ingrained sooner. So I do recommend trying to play in some different keys as soon as you can. Maybe go up a whole step to E minor. So it's gonna outline an E minor because it outlines D minor in the key of C. Lower neighbor, and then 5, 7, 6. And so I always try to break down whatever I'm learning into a few phrases, because phrases are an easier thing for us to memorize as opposed to thinking about notes, especially as our things we're trying to learn and memorize get longer. We have to use all of these little kind of extra tools to help us to be able to recall something. And so breaking it down into, okay, outline the 2 chord, lower neighbor, 5, 7, 6. If I go to the key of A flat, I start on the B flat minor chord. Let's see, outline. So we got outline B flat minor. Let's see. That doesn't sound right. 5, 7, 6. So I went to an extension instead of starting on the root, right? So the B minor that I'm outlining is here. If I'm in the key of F, okay, I just learned a lesson from when I transpose it to A flat. I started on a rootless B flat minor voice in my right hand, and that was wrong. And actually it wasn't, it was wrong for what I was trying to do, but it didn't sound bad. Oh, yeah, maybe it sounded bad. Okay, but if I'm going to the key of F, I'm going to try to remember what my mistake was. I started in a rootless version, but it actually outlines a rooted chord. Lower neighbor. 5, 7, 6. And I might start taking that through some different keys. And then the next move would be, okay, maybe after I practice that for a few minutes for a few days in a row, because remember, hitting these things more regularly makes you remember them better than practicing them for a long time. You know, practicing this for 45 minutes and then not touching it again, we don't know. But if you practice this for 5 minutes a day, and then next week, you're going to have it really a lot deeper because you reviewed it. And like with learning language, they know that the best time to review is when you're about to forget something. It like solidifies it even more, right? And so I would maybe practice this for a few days. And then when I'm playing songs, every time I try to see a 2-5, regardless of if it's a good artistic choice or not, I'm going to try to insert my lick just for a little while. That makes it so that I can get used to using it as a movable piece of material, as opposed to just a little exercise drill. So maybe let's see, can I do it? I don't know if I know it good enough. It's not good. Right? So, but I have to go through and I'd have to, like when I'm playing, I look for those 2-5-1s and I try to force this into different situations. And now it's starting to become a piece of vocabulary. And then you get good at that. And then, okay, now it's good, right? And now you can kind of move on and learn another lick. So one of the things that people do with it's sometimes a problem at the beginning is they think, okay, I'm just gonna learn all this vocabulary, and not realizing that it actually takes a long time to practice one little idea, right? It might take, to learn a little phrase like this, you might practice this for a week or 10 days, right? And then you can move on to another one, but then you can be sure that you have this kind of riff or piece of vocabulary in your long-term memory, right? Because nothing is worse than learning all of these things and spending all this time and then saying, oh, wow, I remember I think I practiced something like that at one point, but I never really got it, right? And so that's kind of what we try to avoid. But it can be kind of fun and nice to learn little patterns like this, right? And so you might find some transcription, or we, of course, have lots of licks. But this is maybe how I would approach like our monthly vocabulary sheet. Okay. So does anybody have any questions?
Well, can I say something?
Yeah, of course. Happy graduation. Naomi's graduating UW today, everybody.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we are having a party after this, well, online party. So I don't have a question, but I really find this class valuable because you're going over fingering of every move, and then focusing on the 5/4 and how to transit to 1/2, and we did a way to strengthen the fingers. But also, once we master this fingering, any play would be more smooth for me, particularly because I'm having the trouble of how to smooth out my music for transitions. So I find it very valuable. Thank you.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem. So, okay, well.
I have a question, which is embarrassing because I know you're recording this. I can see, but I'm going to ask you. I guess I didn't realize that a 6. I just had a little breakthrough here. I didn't realize that you play the 5 with it.
Oh yeah.
D6.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the 6s in chords, the 6 is a substitute for the 7 a lot of times. So the 7 is the one that comes down and becomes the 6. So yeah, we keep the 5 in there. A lot of the times if you play a 6 chord like this, what we really are playing here is an A minor chord, right? Now, we're talking piano right now. Because in musician lingo, if I was a guitar player, I would probably say that this is C6. They probably wouldn't play the G with the A. But they deal in a different instrument, and so it feels different to them, right? But for pianists, a lot of time we assume the sevens become sixes, and so when guitar players play a C6 and they just play this, we normally end up playing this C major 6 anyways, and it tends to fit pretty good. Of course, this is still also just an A minor chord, right? So all your major 6 chords are really like minor 7 chords. The difference is what note is being played in the bass, right? And a lot of this is why, like, you can have a, you know, for instance, we could have a pop progression, and I could keep the same chord here. Didn't have to change anything. Didn't have to change anything. Now, if I want to go to this G, I need to play something different. C6. Right, and this is the value of the 6 chord, is that when you go to the A minor afterwards, or the 4 chord, the chord actually stays the same. And you'll hear that in a lot of old kind of Motown and Stax recordings and stuff like that. So.
Thanks. That just cleared about 1,000 things up.
Yeah. Oh, Curtis, one of my other students, you guys might know him. He just entered for his lesson and he skipped the group practice. So let's all embarrass him. I'm gonna let him in.
Okay. I have to go. Thank you so much.
See you, Naomi.
You know, Mac, that's T for 2. You can practice your thing over T for 2 also.
Hey, Curtis, how's it going, man? Say hello.
There we go. I'm on.
Thanks.
How's it going?
Yeah, it's going good. We were just doing some group practice. We'll do it again.
Okay.
Yeah, but anybody else have any questions before me and Curtis are going to do a lesson here?
Thanks, Mac.
Yeah, you got it. I hope that was useful.
Thanks, Mac. You gave me a week of practice, at least.
Okay, good. Learn those things.
Thanks,
All right.
Mac.
Bye-bye.
Adios. Adios. Let's see. We got to stop this recording.